All right, man. Thanks so much for joining me. Why don't you tell us your name?
Thank you, Jared. I'm Raven.
The question prompt that we have here is, what do you wish people asked you about or knew about you? You seemed very drawn to this question and came to sit next to me.
I've lived my life like I was going to design or write an encyclopedia in a way. I've been very curious about life and reality, how it works, and about people, how to really relate to people. I have a fundamental framework that there's no strangers, just friends that haven't been introduced yet.
What's your framework? What's your life philosophy?
That goes right into kind of like a religious type of point of view, I guess. So my first introduction to religion was Baptist church when I was very young. I was tiny. I remember it being boring. I was taken there by my grandma and grandpa, and I couldn't understand anything, put it simply. I was born into a family of Scientologists.
Wow.
So when you talk about life philosophy, it is a very practical philosophy to my understanding.
I don't think I've ever met anyone who grew up with that kind of background. So is that still something you practice?
My understanding of it, yeah. My understanding of it is relative to common sense, is how, so fundamentally, Scientology would be, that word breaks down to ology, the study of, and science, the study of how to know, and the study of how to actually attain a true understanding of whatever you're observing or studying. So that's my understanding of that word. It's been something I actually put on the back shelf because I rebelled against the way I was introduced to it when I was very young. I was introduced to the yoga of storytelling, which is essentially obsessively journaling your entire experience and documenting everything rigorously, taking pictures and videos, and then writing and pairing all the synchronicities of the magic of life and how we just live in a magical, mystical world, really, that is super interconnected. It was like a divine communication to take another look at this faith tradition that I was born into. People have controversy with it even being called a religion, which that's fair. But essentially, like, there's a lot of controversy to it because of so much misunderstanding. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I definitely looked at that information, but I was going through these third-party sources to understand the subject instead of going straight to the source and having my own personal experience with it.
Are you saying that you rebelled against it because you maybe believed stories that you heard elsewhere, and that caused the rebellion?
It may not even be that I rebelled against this religion. I didn't come there upon my own will. You know, my brother and I were asked, hey, let's get in the car, let's go for a Sunday drive. And 30 minutes, an hour into it, where are we going? We're going for a drive. Turned into like 4 to 6 hour drive, and eventually we ended up at a church in Cincinnati, Church of Scientology. You don't want to be coerced or even feel like you were coerced into anything. Because I'm so curious, I can hop into people's perspective and see, oh, I totally understand where you're coming from. From your lens, that totally makes sense. You're so right. We're right and correct based upon the knowledge and experience we're coming from. That's where like the biggest conflicts and wars came from, is not seeing each other's perspective, not being able to communicate clearly. I fundamentally believe that we are one organism experiencing itself. That's how I've gathered my understanding of life. Even in like other scriptures, the kingdom of heaven is within you, the kingdom of God is within you. I went through a Native American seminary.
You're full of random tricks here.
Well, yeah, I've been very curious about life, and I studied indigenous medicine work. So, in faith healing.
Can you define what that is?
Faith healing?
Yeah.
I have faith that this solid chair, so to speak, will hold me up. Even though I know from quantum physics and science and all the technology now that it's just a bunch of empty space. But I have a belief and I have faith that I'm in divine hands of grace, and grace is holding me up. The molecules could just like swallow me up, whatever me is, in this body that appears to be physical and all this stuff. So what is faith healing? It's a remedy to even like run these lines of thought. Because like if you're ever scared or whatever, is like what is actually going on, because your environment is literally like a part of you, if not like you, literally. And so all of life is just trying to survive, aiding us towards greater levels of living and excitement and enthusiasm and ability to survive in general. It's your responsibility to take care of your body. This is your holy temple, and the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven is within this temple. And so it's not like you can go to a church. You're always in church.
It's our
Yeah.
individual church or temple or what have you.
I experience that we have very, very deep levels of wisdom. All of our ancestors, our bodies were formed by our previous, our parents. As far as they carried the torch, mother and father passed the torch and developed this body together. Now you're in this body, and you're as far as your parents pioneeringly made it in life, so to speak. All the wisdom and all the experiences are recorded in the body, so we can tap into all of that. Communication is the vehicle for ascension, to expand and be liberated. So how do we communicate? Well, we use our little tongue as a little flipper, and we breathe this breath through this passageway, and we just flip and make sounds with our tongue. Breath, whenever you look at the etymology, the study of words, it will be broken right down to spirit in the original language. So your breath and what we breathe is spirit. So we're all breathing the same air.
What language would that be?
I believe it's Esperar, which is Latin.
Okay.
And yeah, you'd have to do your due diligence.
I'll look it up. I believe you. Well, Raven, thanks so much for joining me on my show here. It was an awesome chat.
Thank you, Jared. This was fun.
Sarah, thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the Jared Gold Show. What is on your mind today?
Should we talk about Valentine's Day? Yeah. Or do I talk about what's always on my mind? I guess, what is the actual possibility of me finding a soulmate, like a real partner? And I'm not even saying that has to be a forever partner. I don't even know if I necessarily believe in that. But just one deep connection with a romantic partner would be lovely. But I don't know how possible that actually is and how many people actually get to experience that.
I see. And is that any coincidence that today is Valentine's Day? That's just something that's always on your mind?
It kind of is coincidental that it's Valentine's Day a little bit. I guess whenever I picture myself in where I want to be in the future, I guess I do picture a partner by my side, so it kind of goes hand in hand.
Thank you for sharing that. And how old are you for the viewers?
I'm 24.
24, okay. Have you had a taste of that kind of person or experience yet that you're seeking?
I guess I've experienced everything I want in a partner through my friendships. I've just never had that romantic sort of intimacy with somebody.
How has it felt up to now?
I mean, I guess it really just feels like I'm still figuring myself out just like everybody, but I'm also in this place where I don't know if there's ever going to be a pinnacle of my self-expansion that I hit. So it's at what point am I deserving of this sort of romantic love, I guess?
What do you mean by that?
I guess I just mean that deserving is really all up to the person. Who is to say who deserves what when you're only in control of yourself? And, so really you get to decide what you do and do not deserve. But if you haven't healed past traumas or you haven't worked through your own insecurities, you're not going to feel like you deserve anything, or you're going to tell yourself you don't deserve anything. I don't know whether I just need to expand myself more or build my capacity to accept the sort of love that I wish to receive, or if I'm blocking myself already by saying, well, I don't see anybody out there, or maybe it's just not the right time and I need to do more. It's just kind of yourself telling you what you do and do not deserve.
What I hear, and you can tell me if you disagree, what I hear is I'm not enough right now.
If I'm even questioning, do I or do I not deserve it, there's probably a deep part of me saying that you don't deserve it right now, or that you might not deserve it right now. Even the question in and of itself is telling. But I just don't know what that is yet. I guess I just need to do a little bit more work. But then that's the cycle, right? Is I'm I just need to keep working on myself and whatever, and then I'm like simultaneously telling myself that it doesn't exist now.
Are you clear on the feeling that you want, irrespective of the exact qualities?
I think the feeling scares me. I think the feeling of being completely in love with somebody causes the possibility of being consumed, which I'm not sure if that's what love is. I'm not sure if that's how it's supposed to be. I think because I have not experienced the feeling, it is scary. There's part of me that has trouble trusting in someone else to have the courage to love somebody like that.
Do you believe that it is possible for you?
Absolutely. I think that it's possible. I just think that it might be somewhere that I'm not, I guess. It's just very confusing. Everybody's like, you have to love yourself before you can love someone else and all of this stuff. And it's like, okay, well, once you've done the work and you do love yourself, it does take another human being to interact with you. Unless, like, we are wizards and we can just attract them, which is still a possibility. I don't know.
Do you love yourself?
I love myself more than I ever have. I think that I'm still learning how to and what that means and what that looks like. Also, my concept of love is always expanding and changing. So the concept of loving myself is as well.
I don't think the camera can see it, but you're wearing heart socks.
I am.
Which, of course, yeah, hold it up for the camera. So, I think that's funny. You're ready for love. You got the love socks. We're talking on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Do you have any other big concerns about or fears around love? Hypothetically, let's say tomorrow you're walking down the street or just in a normal place and you stumble across a person that you're into. If that person was your dream person, would you be able to recognize it and accept it, be open to it? Or would you still feel blocked?
I'm not saying I wouldn't have my hesitations. And I'm also not saying that past traumas wouldn't come up. However, I feel like if it was the one, and we could tell and we knew, I would be able to overcome those, or there would be some sort of comfortable feeling that I can allow to shed light on those shadows or just kind of fully encompass me or embody me. I feel like if it was somebody that I actually knew we were soulmates, I wouldn't feel nervous.
Coming to a conclusion here, where are you looking right now? Or where are you meeting people?
I don't really meet new people that often. However, I've been trying to be a little bit more social. I actually went to a networking event, which, I've met some people there. Not all bad experiences. I'm not on dating apps. I've been on them before, but for a short time.
Are you making yourself able to be found?
I guess I'm just not sure, how does one want to be found?
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Did you enjoy the conversation?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
All right, Haley, thanks so much for joining me here. You mentioned before we recorded about an example where you ended up meeting someone in a coffee shop in a place that you had just moved to, and it is a different state than we're in now. Could you tell me a little bit about, firstly, why you even went up to that person, and then how that conversation fired, and then unexpected result that came from it?
Yeah, so after graduation, I moved to South Florida.
1 second, this dog is literally pissing on video.
My last year of college, I interned at Oracle on the global events team. My entire 4 years at school, I had gone to Florida probably every other month for an ex-boyfriend, but I loved Florida and I was determined to move there. So after graduation, when I got my full-time offer from Oracle, it was remote, so I did move down to West Palm Beach, Florida for about 6 months, but 2 weeks after being there, I was laid off. So I was kind of left feeling very lost. There's nothing to do in West Palm Beach, Florida. There's literally no business unless you're in finance. I would spend my days at coffee shops applying for jobs, trying to figure out what was next for me. And I ended up overhearing 3 women talking about social media and events, and I had experience in both. I had just got back from the beach. My hair was in like a really wet bun on the top of my head. I was wearing a sweatshirt and shorts. But I could just hear myself, if I didn't go up to these ladies, I was going to regret it for the rest of my life. I waited for them to finish talking. All I had drinking was coffee. I was shaking. 3 hours later, I walked up to them and I said, "Hey, this is really random and a long shot, but my name's Haley. I was just laid off from my job and I have experience in events and social media. I heard y'all talking about that. Are y'all hiring?" One of them owned a social media agency. It was just her. And she asked me if I wanted to talk to her for a while after their meeting was over. So she came up talking to me for 2 hours. I had my portfolio and resume pulled up because I was applying for jobs, obviously. And after speaking, she asked me to make her 3 sample posts and write copy for them. And she called me the next day and hired me. It was like what was always meant to be. I later moved back to Austin, but it was a blessing in disguise getting laid off because I now love my job, I love my boss, and I'm working not very often at all.
You were working a 40-hour-a-week job before, and now you work a lot less, but you're making essentially the same amount of money.
Yeah, so when I went into it, she asked me what my hesitations were about working with her, and I told her I didn't want to be making less than I was at my job at Oracle. After showing her my work and having a few discussions, I now work about 15 hours a week and make the same amount I was making at my 40-hour work week at Oracle.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised to hear you were laid off 2 weeks after you moved.
Yeah, it was rough.
What was your overall outlook after you got laid off, after just moving? Do you expect to get this way better opportunity that quickly? What was your overall mindset and how'd you view the whole situation?
I knew that I had moved to Florida for a reason. I loved it there. I'm happiest there. I'm happiest by the water, being in nature. My initial thought after I was done crying was, hey, like, you're in this beautiful place. Why don't you spend as much time as you can, like, exploring this new city? I had never left Austin before, so this was my first time out of the city, let alone the state. So I decided to spend as much time as I could exploring new things. Me and my dog were taking as much time as we could, eating new places, trying new beaches, experiencing new things, trying to meet new friends. That's kind of always been my outlook. And then after about 3 weeks to a month, I started really applying to new jobs because I did need a new job. Luckily, I wasn't paying rent, so that helped a lot. But after applying to a few jobs and going through a few interview processes, I realized that the hiring freeze had already kind of set in. The hiring market is insane right now, and I received 2 offers, and then they were put on hiring freezes for those companies, so those were later rescinded. So I kind of was then in a little bit of a freak out mode and accepted the fact that I would probably have to move back to Austin. But then I met my new boss and I love her. So
I feel like you hello dog, is you have an element of trust that things will work out. It's not a worst case scenario doomsday type thing running in your head. How have you cultivated an overall sense of trust that things are going to work out for you?
I do a lot of reflection and journaling. And so in every situation when something goes bad, I'm always journaling or at least thinking about the positive things that came from. When I moved to Florida and I got laid off, obviously that was a negative experience, but I met my new boss. I always knew I wanted to live in Florida. Now I get the chance to travel back there every 6 to 8 weeks to meet with clients. I do write down negative things always because I want to acknowledge that they happened. I go really in depth. I'll go pages on pages for each time I sit down and write in my journal, which is kind of crazy.
You sound like you have a lot of clarity and specificity with what you're seeking to accomplish or people you're looking to meet or whatever. So is that true? And if so, how does one get clarity for themselves, especially if they're feeling stuck?
You say I know what I'm looking for. I don't know exactly. Again, putting myself in front of a ton of different types of people, not just one type of person, because I learn something from everyone that I interact with and am friends with. So that's one way that I think some people can find clarity in what they want to do and what they want to accomplish and how they're going to be able to get there. That's taught me a lot, is just surrounding myself with different types of people.
So in actuality, you're not wildly clear on anything, and you're just like, hey, what's a logical step I could take now that might get me to clarity? And you force yourself to do that.
Yes, one step at a time. Firm believer in one step at a time. I don't have my specific goal, but I know that I will meet people who will help me like realize what it is exactly that I want, and then they can help me get there or realize for myself how to get there. My outlook on life is that no interaction is a bad interaction.
So one step at a time, open-minded, always putting yourself out there.
Go with the flow.
What's the logical next step that will ideally take me into this general direction I want to go, but be open to whatever and like sample all the things and trust that clarity will come.
Yes. Lots of change.
But with a bias towards action.
Yes.
You said previously with the woman that became your boss, you said you had a feeling where if you didn't talk to her, you would regret it for the rest of your life.
If I go through an experience, I reflect so much on it, and I knew if I would have left the coffee shop without at least saying hi, I would have been thinking about it for months and just been like, dang, what if I could have worked for her? What if she could have been a mentor for me? If she said no, I just leave the coffee shop and I probably would have never seen her again in my life.
So you anticipated the pain and frustration in all the reflection of not saying hi to her.
Yes.
And weighed it with the low stakes of just, hey, I'm going to say hi to her because the downside is low if I actually take action.
I always think of the negative, but I always think of the positive like 100 times more.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Well, Haley, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me.
Of course. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for joining me here. Would you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Elizabeth Kaluzinski.
What kind of prompted you to do such a thing in the first place, to stop you dead in your tracks to turn around?
I saw Deep Conversations and didn't really see the rest of it, and then I saw YouTube and thought, hey, just a season of Yes right now in life. Thought I'd come check it out.
Well, real quick, actually, can you tell me about this season of Yes, like what that means to you and what sparked that?
Currently training for my first marathon, running for my girlfriend Haley. Her father passed away last year from Alzheimer's, so all of us soccer girls are supporting her and raising money for that. And so that's been a process. It's the Austin Marathon this weekend and been training since the fall. And back then I actually was laid off from my job, so currently trying to commit to the process and doing hard things even if I may not want to, and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so this fit in perfectly with that theme of my life right now.
Why did you decide that now was the time to do things that made you uncomfortable? Obviously, not everyone when they get laid off has such a reaction.
COVID, I think, was really hard on everyone. Mine was really tough. Called off an engagement to somebody that I'd been dating all throughout college, and then had a hiatus between roles because of COVID again. So I went through this before, and then my grandmother passed away unexpectedly. Went through a season of life where I really had to find my identity again and figure out what life's about, and realized, oh, and my best friend's husband unfortunately passed away in a motorcycle accident. The whole series of things that made me confront with what's important in life, and I've realized community, connection, and authenticity is really what matters. And to get to that, you have to go through the barriers of uncomfortableness to reach that uncomfortableness within myself and really get to my truth and meeting others where they're at.
Thank you for sharing that. What feels most alive for you to share right now?
My biggest fear right now and uncertainty is finding that next play in my career. It's, again, going back to being uncomfortable, is applying to hundreds of jobs and not hearing back, and not identifying as a loser or a failure. And my story's not unique. A lot of people across the nation are feeling that across the board. I've crushed jobs that I've been at, executing and providing results, and then I feel like I have to go into these interviews and prove myself. It's just a frustrating process. It's something where you're not what they're looking for, they're not what you're looking for. It can be a very negative cloud over people, and so finding those pockets of joy and pulling yourself out of it. That's kind of what's on my mind. I think it's really important to mention I wouldn't be this positive or upbeat or uplifting if it wasn't for the people in my life, for my family who's in Illinois. Yet if I said I needed them tomorrow, they would drive halfway across the country for me. My friends here that have turned into family, and I've met my incredible boyfriend, Steven, who's very uplifting and encouraging me through the process and reminding me to focus on the things that I can control.
With the job thing, what makes you feel like a loser if you've already had a lot of success and traction in your career in different capacities?
That's what I'm grappling with, is what is the definition of a loser? I realize that I'm not. It's that initial self-talk. That's what I'm overcoming, is those initial negative human thoughts to keep me protected.
What were you doing, just for context, at previous roles?
Background in sales, biz dev, and most recently in recruiting in the tech space.
What would be your ultimate dream job if you could work on anything and know that it would pay the bills, you'd do well?
What you're doing is having deep, authentic connections with people, just helping them figure out what's next in life. I guess a therapist, but not a therapist. That would be pretty cool.
I like to say I'm an armchair therapist.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that recruiting was one avenue that I was able to do that through, connecting with loved ones or strangers. I don't personally enjoy the social media posting and like getting everything looking good, so I'd want somebody else to take care of that, where I could do the talking and asking of questions.
What would be your ultimate questions to ask, or ultimate people to interview?
What lights you up? What drives you? Why do you do what you do? Would ultimately, why? Actually, I'd love to ask you, why do you do this? Why do you cultivate deep conversations with people?
What have been your best ways to get to know yourself?
Asking myself what lights me up. Running. Honestly, running helps to clear the fog and get through all of the BS of you're a loser or you should be doing X, Y, and Z, and really sitting with myself, and then that comes through. Or even conversations like this, but with my mom or my aunt or my boyfriend, to really process that out and think things differently is really how I go about that.
How do you recommend building authentic connections with others as opposed to the norm? Maybe you have some friends and you do certain activities together or drink together, but you don't feel like you can really tell anyone anything of substance.
I think it all starts with themselves, like myself. Is it really those people, or is it a fear of yourself of showing that and being a goober or being too much or too little and thinking about other people's perceptions? And that's valid, because we're all wired for connection and that comes from some place. So maybe it is your intuition and you're having a visceral reaction where you shouldn't trust a person or open up with them, but you have to check yourself of why are you putting yourself in those situations? Why are you connecting with those people?
If I summarize, if you don't have deep connections with others, it's probably because you don't have a deep connection with yourself.
Correct, yeah.
I like that. What would you say are your superpowers in general?
With something that you mentioned, being able to shine my light on others and just making people feel safe and loved and welcome, even on strangers. I think love is this word that we're like, oh, I can't say I love you. I'm a endless vat of love, and I think being able to share that with others is definitely my number one.
Do your friends naturally come to you and ask you to listen or for advice or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And do you always say yes? Is this just a regular thing?
Yeah, it's usually organically, like we'll be talking and then I can just tell by the tone of their voice, or even strangers or a mutual friend, and I'll be like, how are you really? What's going on? And then they feel safe to open up and share. I always repost other people's stuff on Instagram, like how can you better reframe or show up in a conversation or know yourself better. And I've had people privately message me, thank you, and this has helped me in this season or what I'm going through.
That's like a regular thing that happens.
Everybody laughs at me because I always like repost stuff and people will message me and be like, please keep it up.
Are there other types of jobs that are like salaried, more quote unquote stable, whatever, that would tie you over, that allow you to leverage these skills?
That's why I really enjoyed recruiting. It was nice to actually help people and care and actually impact their lives.
What would need to happen for you to regain confidence and be like, you know what, I'm on the right path, I'm cool, I don't need to stress? Besides for, of course,
I just need to put a sticky note of commit to the process and just remind myself that it only takes one opportunity, so I just need to keep doing what I'm doing and realize that it'll happen. I didn't start training for the marathon on day one and say, all right, I'm ready for a marathon. And same with interviewing or sales, right? It's all the same. Committing and being disciplined even when you're not feeling great.
but deep down, you trust in your abilities.
Oh, yeah. You could give me a job that I've never done before and I'm going to do a good job. I'll figure it out.
Are there any other skills that you have that you don't even acknowledge? They feel so easy and effortless. You don't even count as a skill?
Surfacing like core needs, solving what is the core problem, why are we just working at things, being able to identify that what we're working on is like the core problem or not. And I didn't realize that that was actually a skill set, or asking questions that people may find annoying and being like, why are you asking it? Being able to be an outsider looking in.
I love it. Well, you've been a great interviewee.
Yeah, thanks for the time.